Hello, everybody. Welcome to Love Insight, the site for science based insight to help you find love. I am your host, Brandon Rader, psychological researcher, matchmaker, dating and relationship coach. And this is our other fabulous host, Arlene Washburn.
Hi, everyone. Arlene Washburn here, science based dating and relationship coach, and super excited to get into this topic today: how to fight fair in a relationship. But before we go there, what is your love insight for today, Brandon?
So, my love insight for the week has to do with being ready for your ideal relationship and your ideal partner. And a lot of people, what I have found, especially with clients, is that they feel like they need to wait until they're in a relationship to start doing certain things that would help them shape their ideal relationship. For example, exercise, eating healthy, traveling. All of these qualities or these things, a lot of people feel like when I'm in a relationship, I want to be in a relationship with someone who exercises and helps hold me accountable. I want to start eating healthier, and I want someone who to eat healthy with who can hold me accountable. I want to start traveling more, but I want to wait until I'm in a relationship so I can start traveling with someone. And what we have, Arlene and I have talked about this in the past, and incompatibility is one of the leading causes for divorce, relationship dissolution, and at minimum, the point of contention in a lot of relationships. And so I was working with this client, and she was talking about some of her lifestyle and relationship goals and how she wants to start doing a lot of these things when she's in a relationship. Now, it's possible that a goal could be something that you plan to do in the future, but it's better when it's something you're already doing and you plan to continue to do, especially in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because if, say, for example, you are looking for someone who is fit, and you yourself are not exercising regularly and you yourself are not fit right now, someone who is fit and exercises regularly is most likely not going to want to be in a relationship with someone who does not already engage in those things. Not to say it can't happen, and not to say that you couldn't meet someone and tell them, like, hey, my goal is to be more fit and eat healthier. And I would love to be in a relationship with someone like that because I feel like it would motivate me and hold me accountable. And that person might be open to that, but it's not as likely. That person is likely not to be attracted to that person. So, when thinking of your ideal relationship, don't wait to start being the best version of yourself in a relationship. Start doing it today so that you can meet your ideal person.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And also, you need to do things for yourself. You can't, it's really important to be an independent person, to also have an interdependency. And, so it's not like everything evolves around your significant other. So it's really important to, if you have passions and you have things that you need for yourself, to go ahead and get started on those things and don't wait. But my love insight, I literally just got off the phone on a discovery call, and just a wonderful woman, very attractive, and she's really eager to meet her ideal match. And she just happens to be in an area that she moved to for work. And she basically said that she doesn't believe that her person is there. And so she's been living there for a while, I think a couple of years, working for this particular company, and that's why she moved there. And so I just reminded her that if you believe that your person is not here and that you're not going to meet someone here, then so it shall be, because we co create our reality. And so why have that mindset? You haven't met everyone who lives in your area. And what makes you think that you're not able to meet someone there? And in fact, a couple of the reasons were that, people weren't worldly and they didn't travel, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I know where she is. And I said, a lot of New Yorkers moved there. And I know a lot that have been moving there. So these people travel. So it's just a mindset, right? That people just decide, where I live is not a place where I could ever meet someone. And so they don't. So it's really important to make sure that your belief systems are supporting the goals that you have. Otherwise, you're co creating at every moment what based on your what you're thinking. So I just wanted to share that because I hear this all the time. I don't know about you, Brandon, but I'm always hearing people like, "There's nobody here where I live."
Yeah, whether you're in a small city or a big city, I hear it from people who live in New York and LA and Chicago, the larger metropolitan areas. There's just no one here. I'm like, you live in one of the most densely populated areas in the U.S., and you're telling me there's no one there today. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of
So
time a mindset.
total and completely totally about mindset. So let's jump into our topic. You know, I love talking about this because when people are single and have not had a long-term relationship, a lot of times they believe that if you meet someone that you think is compatible and you begin to have conflict, that that is a bad thing and that means that you should run for the hills. And what a lot of people don't realize is that conflict is inevitable, it's necessary, and it's a source of information, and having conflict is okay. And conflict just means that there's some sort of disagreement where you're not exactly on the same page, and it requires a conversation, it requires something. So, and sometimes that could be an argument or fighting, for lack of a better word. And so we want to talk about how to fight fair in a conflict. And so let's jump into that. What do you have, Brandon?
Well, for those on here who those of those listening who don't know, I worked as a mediator for a couples counseling practice for many years, and I'm actually a certified mediator through the University of Colorado. And so I have worked with a lot of couples who are facing serious conflicts, and as a result, are have been on the or were on the verge of either dissolving their relationship or were in the process of dissolving their relationship. So there's definitely some good techniques and tips that we can provide you that can help you navigate conflict. But one of the biggest things that I always communicate, and it kind of echoes what you were just saying, is that happy, healthy relationships are not conflict free. That just doesn't exist. Happy,
Mhm.
healthy relationships are full of conflict. What makes them happy and healthy is the way that you approach them and using them as an opportunity to learn and grow and strengthen the relationship. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what causes conflict, right? It's as Arlene was saying, it occurs when you're not on the same page. It's a difference of perspectives. And even if you're in the dating process, you two are completely compatible on the same page in terms of the lifestyle you want to live and the relationship you want to create, that doesn't mean that things don't change throughout the relationship. You change as individuals, and your relationship goals might also change. And so you need to have the ability to come together and reassess regularly. Where are we as an individual? Where are we as a couple? So, one of the techniques that I like to use is something I call a love life list assessment or a love life scoring system. And my partner and I, we do one big evaluation once a year on our anniversary. And of course, we're checking in with each other regularly, but we do one big one on our 1 year anniversary. And coming up to the date, we will create our lifestyle goals list and our relationship goals list. Lifestyle goals are things that pertain to us as individuals. We're going to do it and we want it whether we're in a relationship or not. And the relationship goals obviously pertain specifically to the relationship. Of course, there can be crossover. So, for example, if I say one of my lifestyle goals is to live a healthy lifestyle, if it's something that I want to either do with my partner or I want my partner to also do, then it crosses over into that relationship goal zone. And I want to clarify, when I say goals, this means something that you are currently doing and plan to continue to do, or it can be something that you haven't done but you plan to do. So we'll create these lists and then we come together and we try not to influence each other as much as possible. He'll read his, I'll read mine. We'll see how much they align. If there's disagreement there or if something doesn't quite align, then we approach it and ask each other, what can we do to work together to come to either a compromise, collaborate on it, or if it's a deal breaker, we have to ask each other, is this still right? Are we still right for each other? Is this relationship still working for us?
Yeah, I think that's really important in terms of coming into, creating agreement and harmony in the relationship. But in terms of fighting fair, the first thing I want to say is that, a lot of times they tell you don't sweat the small stuff. And that's really not good advice. You should sweat the small stuff because those small things add up, but there's a way to go about it, right? Because especially so if you're in the dating, in a dating scenario, the small things, you need to be able to communicate about those things, and it requires having your boundaries and knowing how to communicate boundaries so that it's not a highly emotional and intense situation where you're fully, activated in order to communicate it, because it's not going to come out the right way. And when you come across a conflict, it's really important to focus on the issue and not each other. In other words, if you are in some sort of disagreement over something that maybe someone said or something that they did, focus on the thing that's happening right then, right there, and not make it about the person. Like, you always do this and you're this, or you're inconsiderate. If something was done that was inconsiderate, find a way to acknowledge and express that, the activity itself, without accusing the person. Because once you start name calling and you make it about the person, then you're wronging them. People shut down and they get activated, and that's what escalates an argument rather than resolving. The goal is to get to agreement. So that's something that is really important. Do sweat the small stuff, communicate about it, make sure you have your boundaries, learn to communicate boundaries, and make sure that you're addressing the issue at hand and not the person who has committed the infraction, so to speak. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice, particularly, focusing on the issue and, like you said, not the person. And remember that it's in both parties' interest to focus on how can it's kind of a cliche statement, but focus on it's you against the problem as a couple,
Exactly.
as opposed to trying to win. So one way to enter this when you actually do have a conflict is to think it's something called a ZOPA, and it stands for Zone of Possible Agreement. So when you're having a conflict, you might need to take a step back and say, I need to mull over this for a little bit to really think about what my ZOPA is, or perhaps you already know. So you need to have an idea. That's how you create some boundaries, right? You need to know what is your zone of possible agreement on this issue, on this matter, so that you know that you're not, so that you don't allow yourself to be pushed outside of that zone of possible agreement and essentially be put into a position where your boundaries are not respected, or ultimately you're not going to be happy and you're going to harbor resentment if you do not come within this zone of possible agreement. And allow the other person to do the same, because if you guys express your zone of possible agreement and you're both in like the same zone, it makes it really easy to come up with a solution for it because you guys know where one another is at. If you two are outside of each other's zone of possible agreement, you have to then try, it might be a little bit harder, but you can try to assess, is there an area where they cross over a little bit? And if they don't, then you want to use what is called a BATNA. BATNA stands for Best Alternative to a Negotiated Agreement. So, in which case, maybe you have an idea of what you want the agreement to be, but you need to accept the fact that maybe there might be an alternative to it just in case you guys do not cross over into any zone of possible agreement. What is the best alternative? What is the compromise essentially that you're willing to accept, worst case scenario? And don't lead with that because that's not where you necessarily want to land, but you have to understand compromise is sometimes necessary in all relationships, and so you need to know what is the most you're willing to compromise on a situation.
And that's such a great point. And I think a lot of the arguments that ensue is because people want to be right. So they go into a discussion with an idea and they just want to be right. And I think if you can move away from right and wrong and just express how you feel, and then allow the other person to express how they feel, validate, listen, validate, maybe even summarize what you're hearing, because I think a lot of disconnect happens when people are heated and communicating in such a way that it's not coming out the right way, and so it doesn't land properly, and then it escalates the situation. And the fact of the matter is they tell you don't go to bed mad, but you should, if you have been activated in a discussion with someone and you're not able to at that point be able to have a conversation. Maybe as a couple you have a word that you use that means timeout, we need to walk away because our discussion is no longer going to be productive, and you can go to bed mad. And I'm just going over some of these, trying to dispel some of the things that they tell you. Don't sweat the small stuff, don't go to bed mad. This is erroneous information. It just doesn't line up with what the data and what the science shows. So it's really important to be in the right headspace, and to kind of summarize what you were saying too in layman's term is just basically don't try to be right, just try to get to agreement. And sometimes it means to agree to disagree. You either agree on something together because you're tackling the situation as a problem that you both have, and you're both trying to figure out a way to mitigate it from happening again, or you just eventually agreeing to disagree, because 69% of the issues between couples are recurring issues that never get resolved. And that's why when you choose a partner, you have to accept that they're going to have certain characteristics, or I should say behavior, that you may not enjoy but that you can tolerate. And that is part of a relationship. No one's perfect, so we all have things that other people are just tolerating and they may not exactly like, but that's just what relationships are all about. So I want to go into one other issue, and then you can add to this, Brandon, and that is when there is an infraction, when you sort of lose it and do something that really hurts someone. Understand that you need to, there's some ratios out there. I know the Gottman ratio is 5-1. So for one thing that you do that really hurts someone, you need to do 5 things in a positive way to offset the one thing, because the way that we're programmed. So, and I know that there's another stat out there. I believe it's called what is it? The Laredo?
Lasada ratio.
The Losado ratio, which is 3-1, right? But just know that if you can avoid really hurting someone, I mean, it's almost impossible not to, right? Because we're humans. But if you do hurt someone, just know that there is a love bank that is now depleted, and therefore you need to go back and do 3 to 5 things. I err on the 5. I'm more like, you got to do 5 things to offset that one thing that you did to really hurt someone. And also acknowledge when you do something that is hurtful, because we're fallible humans. Just saying you're sorry is the best way to deflate and de-escalate a situation. I'm sorry that I hurt you. I mean, acknowledge what you did that actually happened, because these sorries that don't acknowledge the actual behavior, then that really doesn't have a lot of value for the person on the receiving end. So definitely be quick to apologize, and be quick to admit when you do something that you recognize is not ideal for the scenario, and that it's hurtful, and even though you didn't mean to do that. Because what happens is you deflate the person who's on the receiving end. They could be really mad, but if you are acknowledging, it immediately just subsides. It's like, oh, okay, they know what they did. Yep, they're sorry. All right, I'm a little upset, but I can't like go further into my anger because this person has already apologized and acknowledged. It just does something for you. So anyway, over to you.
So, another way to fight fair in a relationship or in any situation is to distinguish between the interests of the person and the position of the person. Position is the overt statement of where they stand on a matter, which isn't always the best way to determine what that person's true motivation is. That's when you want to dive into what their interests are. So, for example, I might say my position might be in an argument, might be, I don't want to go to this party. That's my position. And if my partner really wanted to go to a party, they could choose to attack the position and say, well, I really want to go to the party. You never want to go to parties. Why don't you want to go to this party? They're only addressing the position. Now, if they jump into the interest, they might say, well, what's your motivation not for wanting to go to the party? Like, why are you feeling like you don't want to go to this party right now? Like, what's the motivation? What's the emotion? What's the reasoning behind it? At that point, it's digging deeper. It's showing me that they care, one, but then also it might be, it leads to the ability to compromise. I
Mhm.
may say something along the lines, well, I'm feeling really anxious because I have a big deadline that day. And so I just don't know if I'm going to be able to get that done, come home, change, have dinner, all in time to go to this party. So, in which case, they might say, well, what if I have dinner ready for you? I'd go pick up your clothes from the dry cleaner so that you have a nice suit waiting for you when you get home? And then is there anything I can do to maybe help you at work with your deadline or any other chores or things I can do? Or maybe we could even go to the party a little bit late. We don't have to be there at 5. We can show up at 6 if your work day runs a little bit late. Right. So by then providing all these alternatives that then appeal to the interest, that motivation, that emotion behind my position, either one, it might completely diffuse me. And I'm like, you're right. There's absolutely no reason why I should have this position if all these things are being met. Or I might come to a compromise. Okay, yes, you know what? I don't need you to pick up my dry cleaning, but if we go at 6 p.m., then I should be able to get my work done, grab my own dry cleaning on the way home, and then I can grab a small bite to eat on our way there.
Yeah. That's such a great point. And I think, to simplify that a little bit is just really asking questions, because you need to understand where people are coming from. And sometimes we're very short or abrupt in what we say, but don't give a full explanation behind, like you said, the position and the motivation. So if you genuinely care about someone rather than getting upset, just digging into the real emotion beneath the anger or whatever that is going on, the stress, then you can have empathy and compassion for the person so that you can then offer to help, which is so important. And the one thing I want to say, that I should have probably said from the beginning, is when you're in a relationship with someone that you love and you both are in love with each other, and you recognize, and this is something I've said to my husband, it's like sometimes there might be a reaction from him, but I always say, just know that I love you and I'm coming from a place of love and that I consider you my partner. So I don't want to be in conflict. And if I say something that might hurt you, ask me why I said it, or ask me to say it again. You can tell me, hey, this didn't land the right way. What are you trying to say? Or it felt this way, or it upset me. And then give me the ability to recover and to do something to offset what I said, right? Because sometimes people just automatically get pissed off when they hear something that they don't like, and they react or overreact, or they'll downplay, which is something very annoying when you're feeling a certain way and someone's downplaying it. So just digging deeper and asking questions to understand where people are coming from is a huge deflector and diffuser of arguments and fights between couples, that is just a great method to implement.
Yep, absolutely. And something else to be cognitive of when fighting fair is to call yourself out. So, a lot of people, like, for going back to that concept of the interest versus positions, even if my partner was to ask me about my interests behind a position, like, well, why don't you want to go to this party? Like, what are the reasons? What's going on? Like, what's the motivation here? How are you feeling? I could be manipulative and make things up. I could say, well, I know that my work deadline is going to be going until like 6 p.m. So there's just no way that I can make it work. check myself. Is that true? Is that accurate? Or am I just being hyperbolic? Am I just trying to make up an excuse? Is there another true reason behind it? Am I manipulating the situation to get what I want? Am I saying that knowing it's not 100% true, or that I'm going to make it true because I really don't want to go to this party for another reason?
Mhm.
So call yourself out if you know that you are not being completely honest in a discussion or in a fight, or if you are being manipulative to a certain degree. And even if, here's the hard part, if your partner doesn't call you out, a lot of people be like, all right, well, they didn't call me out, so I'm not going to call myself out. I got what I want. Remember, it's not about necessarily getting what you want, it's about coming to agreement that leaves both parties mutually satisfied. That's the key to fighting fair and having a happy, healthy relationship.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that a lot of people do, and I think women sometimes, bring up things from the past. So what they do is they're in an argument and then they kitchen sink and just throw every argument that's ever happened in the past or into the mix. And it's very important to, if you're having an argument and you want to fight fair, to you're trying to lower the temperature all along, right? You don't want to escalate. You want to get to agreement because you're two loving partners. So stick with the problem at hand right now and don't kitchen sink it. And don't bring up all the drudgery of everything that's happened in the past, because that's not going to help the situation or make the situation worse. And when we are in a conflict, our goal ultimately is to communicate our needs, and then just learning how to do that, whether it's something that was said that didn't land properly, then you communicate a need to, hey, I heard what you said, but it didn't feel good for me. Can you say that in a different way? You're communicating your needs, right? Or if you have to communicate a boundary. So a lot of it is just that. It's really not a fight. You create these fights because things escalate. So that's a big one. The kitchen sinking, and also the stonewalling or defensiveness. So something happens, a person complains about it. Oh, you didn't take out the garbage yesterday, and now we couldn't get rid of the garbage, and it really upsets me because you said you were going to do it, and then you turn around and say, well, you did that last week too. That's not what you do. What you do is you validate and say, oh my goodness, yes, I'm so sorry. I apologize. I overslept. I couldn't get up in time. I'll try to be better next time. And it's done. But no, most people who want to escalate will say, well, you do that all the time. How many times haven't you forgotten the garbage? And then it just creates a bigger problem. So it's very important to acknowledge and not be defensive, not be critical of the person that you're arguing with. Deal with the problem at hand. Don't kitchen sink and bring everything into it. And just validate and acknowledge when you're not doing something that is kind. And, if you need to walk away from the situation until you have calmed down, maybe you have a certain word that you use between each other that just indicates we're going to get out of control here. Let's just walk away. When we calm down, we'll get back to this. But don't let it go. Address the issue so that it is resolved for the future. And that's how relationships grow. And this is how people learn about each other. And this is how you keep the harmony. And I just want to acknowledge Jill, who's out there, and Chantel. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Anything else you have before we wrap up?
No, I think that's a great summary of how to fight fair in a relationship. So, just to recap, in the beginning of your relationship, dating process, try to make sure compatibility aligns as much as possible. Do your check ins, do them regularly. If you don't want to do, again, several times throughout the relationship, but in my relationship, I do one big review once a year where we get together, make sure our lifestyle goals still align, our relationship goals still align. If we need to address an issue, something that doesn't align, then we approach it using our ZOPAs and our BATNAs, the zone of possible agreements, or those best alternative to negotiated agreement. Like Arlene had mentioned, use either the Gottman ratio, that 5 to 1 for every negative thing, try to counter it with 5 positive things, same thing, or the 3 to 1 with the Lasada ratio. And just be honest, approach it, focus on the interests, not the positions, and also try to focus on the
Brandon, I can't hear you, but maybe it's me. Did you mute yourself by mistake?
Nope, I'm back.
Oh, you're back. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's a great summary. And thank you everyone for joining us. We'll be back next week at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Love Insight Show. And I hope that you'll join us. I'm available on Instagram if you want to reach out to me, or on my link tree, which is on my bio, at Arlene Washburn. And if you want to reach Brandon, what's the best way to reach you, Brandon?
Connect with me on Instagram at Brandon Rader Official.